The following is a presentation of the Eagles Sports Network.
Welcome into another edition of Mossy Creek Conversations, the Carson-Newman podcast, where we discuss the history and success of Carson-Newman athletics. And I'm honored to be joined today by Dr. Gene Love, former tennis coach and tennis player at Carson-Newman University. Dr. Love, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and even your schedule as an educator now to join me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Dr. Love, we were talking earlier before you grew up here in Jefferson City, and before we get to how Carson-Newman has changed over the years, just how's the town of Jefferson City? Still a relatively small town, of course, but how has it grown in the past few years?
It's out of control now. I know there are many people who would laugh at that because it's still a small city, small town. But having lived in some large cities for a few years in my life, and then of course being here as a kid and growing up here, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable now, and it definitely is not the same place that it was. It's hard even now to imagine it without a McDonald's, but guess what? There was a time when there was no McDonald's. There was a big White House that sat on that corner. But so anyway, it has changed, like a lot of things.
So growing up here, of course, you had Carson-Newman was here the entire time you've been here, and you started to get interest in tennis when you were young thanks to a coach here at Carson-Newman, Buddy Catlett, who the courts are named after. How did that relationship start off with your interest in tennis?
Well, that was probably the start of it. My parents and I lived in the same neighborhood as the Catletts, and they had basically, obviously they were into tennis, but Buddy Catlett gave me a racket and wanted to have at least one little girl in Jefferson City play tennis. And so that's kind of how it all began, and I began taking tennis lessons over at the city courts during the summers. The tennis coach at UT would come up, and basically kids would line up from 8 in the morning until probably 8 at night taking tennis lessons. And it just kind of started from there, and I guess kind of got out of hand, but then I went on to Knoxville for more tennis lessons and then started competing in tournaments. But it did all start with Buddy Catlett.
And so you grow up, you learn from Coach Catlett here, and you start to develop your career, and it comes time, you got to decide where you want to go to college. Did you always think you were going to just stay inside Jefferson City and go to Carson-Newman?
Well, probably not really. I don't really think I thought about it that much. At that time, it wasn't I don't think it was as big a deal going to college and signing a scholarship. It just wasn't quite that big a deal at the time. It's been a long time ago, a little different culture then, but also especially for women. You really didn't have much of a choice. There weren't many collegiate athletic programs for women, but I was recruited by Carson-Newman, but I was recruited by Austin Peay and University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And I guess I just decided I wanted to be a big fish in a small pond. And so that was kind of what I chose. And it turned out to be the right fit for me. Because I was able to develop my game here just as I would have if I'd gone to an Austin Peay or UT Knoxville. I don't think the development of my game hurt at all because this was just a good environment for me, and it was just a good fit. And so, but yeah, I wanted to be a big fish in a little pond.
And a big fish in a little pond you were. In 1981, you're #1 seed in the NAIA tournament. Big time year for you and the Carson-Newman tennis program. What do you remember from that just historic run?
Well, it's when you say historic run, it makes me feel like I'm old, and then I think, well, maybe because I am a little old. Yeah, not a lot, but a little. I don't know. We were just kind of doing our thing, enjoying playing tennis, and I had some good teammates. Coach Pinkerton was awesome. We were just kind of doing our thing, and that time, that particular year, the 80-81 school year, talking about history, that was the first time the NAIA ever held an intercollegiate tennis from the district through the national tournament in particular for women. So it was a big deal. I mean, this was the first national tournament ever in the NAIA for women's tennis. And then to go out there and find out that you were the number one seed. There's a funny story about how Coach Pinkerton broke the news to me because he didn't want it to freak me out. And so he came by the hotel. He came back to the hotel and took me and another one of the players down the block, and we went to this ice cream store like we were going to get ice cream, and we did. But then that's when he proceeded to tell me, and it's just like, it just kind of blew me. It really did blow me away. But it didn't freak me out. But it was like, wow, you know. Later on that evening, I had some alone time, and that's when I called back home and talked to my mother and said, "You're never going to believe this. You got to help me out here. What's going on here?" You know. So anyway, but it was all good, and we just, I don't know if it's not like when you're in the midst of all of that, you think about that, you know, 40 years later you're going to be still remembering it and talking about it. But we were just doing our thing, loving life and loving tennis. Okay.
Then of course 2 years later we talk about another great run that you had, 1983, a run to the Sweet 16 in the NAIA tournament. What did you learn from that 81 season that kind of helped you move forward in 82 and in 83 to make that run?
Well, first of all, I think one of the things you learn is just the level of competition and what it's going to take. And if this is something you really want to do, this is the kind of dedication, the kind of effort that it's going to take. Also, I think you learn, because you know it is going to take that amount of time and effort, is you've got to decide if that's what you really want. And do you really want to spend that much time? Because when you do that, in order to spend that much time working on your craft and perfecting it, and that kind of being one of your total focus of a lot of days, is that means you kind of have to give some things up to do that. So I think that was a big thing, and probably the next big thing that it taught me is I needed to get better control over my mental approach to the game. And that was probably the biggest thing, because that's what really let me down in 82. In 81, I was having a good run until I got injured. And of course I could continue to play. It's not like it was going to get any worse, but it surely hampered mobility, and that eventually caught up with me. And then in 83, it just seemed like everything kind of came together. And actually that year had a good tournament run all the way through until the semis that year. And so and really in that semifinal match, just I ran into somebody who just, it wasn't that I played so bad. No, I mean, I ran into the eventual champion of the tournament, and she just was playing really well, lights out. It was real interesting. Every year, the person I lost to either won the tournament or they were in the finals of the tournament. It's like, okay. So, but anyway, had a good run, and had a good run those years in doubles as well. First with a hometown person too, a friend I grew up with, Robin Wright. We had a good run. Connie Schwartz, she was from Florida my senior year, because Robin had graduated a year earlier, but we had a good run that year. Connie and I, we complemented each other very well in what I did well, what she did well. And so it was, like I said, it was good. It was all good. I guess when you look back on it, everything's always probably all good, but it really was a special time. But at the time you're going through it, you're too young. You know, you don't don't really think much about that. You're just doing what you love to do with a bunch of teammates that you love being around.
You mentioned your doubles career, still single school record. Yeah, still a record holding on there. 88 career doubles wins. It's an incredible stat to see. With Robin and Connie as your partners, what were you just had great chemistry with each other, and what was the relationship like, not just on the court but off the court as well?
Well, in doubles, really, you don't have to have necessarily the two best players, but there's a certain way to play doubles. There's a certain strategy you need to use. In singles, you can use many different strategies and be successful. In doubles, not so much. So that's one thing. And the other thing is how you mesh with that other person and how you communicate. Robin and I grew up together in Jefferson City. We played doubles in high school. I mean, we just, so we had been friends. We lived next door to each other growing up. And so with Robin, it's after a while, it just got to be like we just thought alike. She knew what I was going to do. I knew what she was going to do. And I think that helped us tremendously. With Connie, it was, really, didn't have as much experience playing with her, but with Connie, once again, it was a good mesh of what she could do well, what I could do well, and we really did hit it off, and we're friends, we weren't just good communicators and partners and teammates, but we were friends off the court as well. And so that all really helped. And I don't know, sometimes, when you just get the right mix of people, and we kind of knew what we were doing, and, we had this connection, and a lot of times you can probably do a little bit better than what your individual talents suggest that you can.
During your time, Jeff City, first time, Coach Catlett, of course, coached you when you were younger, Coach Pinkerton coached you while you're here at Carson-Newman. You hear a lot about the players, former alumni, when they come back and talk about how much of an impact their coaches left on them. What's the impact Coach Catlett and Coach Pinkerton left on you?
Oh, wow, there's no doubt. I had some other coaches as well, from Coach Catlett to some coaches I had in my time in Knoxville with Tom Mosier and Lewis Royal, Del Sylvia, and then Coach Pinkerton kind of took over more when I got to college and everything. But I think, first of all, I wouldn't have done any of this, without those people who not only knew tennis, but they loved tennis. And in terms of tennis, I could take various things away from each of those experiences, the individual people and the experiences. The one thing that was kind of a commonality, though, I think, is the fact that they were committed to you and wanted you to be the best you could be. And they were willing to put in the extra time and effort on the coaching part of it to set the scenario or the environment where you could be successful and draw the best out of you. And that's it. And so therefore, it's that's all about relationship, and that's probably one of the biggest things that is one of my biggest takeaways from my time as a player and as a coach, is that this sport thing we do is about more than just winning and losing. There are other ways to be successful in doing this sport thing, and one of them is the relationships you can develop with other people and how you help other people through your gifts and your talents. And those individuals, those were the folks who instilled that the importance of relationship, loving what you do, the dedication that you brought to it, and so that just the fact that and they were there not just for me, but they were there for other people. as well to help them be the best they could be. And that's, after all of these years, that's what I think it really is just that simple, and that surpasses, it's nice to win, yes, but that relationship survives winning, losing, and anything else. So that's the deal.
So finish your career as a player, Carson-Newman. You decide to go off and get your PhD at Missouri. After a while, you come back and you decide you come back as the tennis coach here at Carson-Newman. How was that quarter set up? How were you contacted about? And then did you ever plan on coming back to Jefferson City after you graduated?
Well, I guess I'll start with, did I ever want to come back to Jefferson City? Frankly, I thought probably when I graduated, I'm getting out of here. You know what I mean? Not anything against Jeff City or Carson-Newman for sure, but it's just, you're young and I think at that time I thought I wanted to head into the fitness and wellness, hospital-based, and so I had a professor here at Carson-Newman that opened some doors of connection at Peabody College of Vanderbilt, and they were starting health promotion exercise science master's program at the time. There weren't a whole lot of them at that time. And so that door opened, and that was a great experience. I got practically almost all the way through that master's program and had a great internship set up that was probably going to turn into a full-time job at a corporation in Nashville to be in it as their fitness wellness person, along with they had already hired a doctor and a nurse, and they were getting ready to build a fitness facility there. And I don't know, it's one of those things where as much as I love that, I just knew that I missed sport and I needed to get back into sport. So that's kind of what I did. I volunteered my time to coach at David Lipscomb my last semester. Their head coach, women's coach, had remembered me from the day, and so I got my first taste of maybe what college coaching would be like, and that's pretty much what I decided to do. So after I graduated, I really did try to find a coaching job. I sent out, some resumes and everything, and they loved the degree I had. Oh, I love that master's degree, but I didn't have any coaching experience. So I got a few nibbles, but no job, and so that's when I kind of packed up and came home, because I was trying to do 2 part-time jobs to be full-time and try to make enough money to live on my own, and I'm going, this is not going to work for very long. So anyway, that's where I came back to Carson-Newman and actually volunteered to get more coaching experience. I helped with Coach Pinkerton for I guess a year or year and a half, maybe 2, and then made a decision to go on and get a doctoral degree. And when I did that, I wound up coming back here toward the end of my doctoral program. And at that time, I was at LSU, going to do that doctoral program and finish that up. And I got wind of the coaching opening here for men's and women's tennis at the time. It was advertised as both. And so I decided, well, the last time I did this thing, they loved my degree, but I didn't have enough experience, and I'll have a little bit more experience under my belt. But so I came back, I interviewed for the job, and I got the job. And so I just transferred back to UT Knoxville. And for my first few years coaching here, I was also basically a doctoral student at UT, finishing up that degree. And then that led right into teaching and coaching here at Carson-Newman, and I guess I never left.
You go back, talk about the first few years, you were taking doctorate classes while coaching here, and there are several times you hear about students who are master's students, they take classes while playing. You talk about undergrad, of course, you're a student athlete, and that
Right.
you know the pressures that are on the athletes to succeed on and off the field and the court. What how did you try to first for yourself for mental health to kind of get yourself in line, and how did you kind of help your players out when you were coaching?
Well, first of all, I guess, and not everybody's like this, but I was always I guess kind of curious, especially about things that I was interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not all the coursework that I took at Carson-Newman was I really interested in, but I knew how to manage my time, okay? And I was a very routine-oriented person, probably still am. That's the way I can manage my time and get my work done yet stay sane. But I found that was, then when I got into coaching here intercollegiately, and I don't know if I helped the athletes out very much, but I just talked a lot about setting priorities or setting goals, and developing good time management skills, and asking for help when you need it. A lot of people, it's tough sometimes for some of us, especially us athletes, and we're rough and tough, and we can do anything we set our minds to, Sometimes it's hard to ask for help, but there's times when you need to, and you need to let somebody help you. But, and so I don't really know. I have a feeling I didn't help my athletes out quite that much, because it seemed like a lot of my athletes were already on top of things, okay, already. So, and I kind of, it's like, good athletes, they perform well on court. They make us coaches look really good regardless of what we've done. And, the same way, if you have good student athletes, they made me look good too, regardless of what I had done. But once again, it's just about, what are your priorities? What do you really want? What do you want out of this? Let's set some goals. Let's develop some time management skills. And then they pretty much took it and kind of ran with it, And so I don't, is there any magic words? Not really. That's another thing I've learned in coaching, is there are very few magic words. It's just a lot of hard work and being able to communicate with people in whatever way that works best for them. But there aren't a whole lot of magic words you can say that turn the tide from being way over here to all of a sudden going way over here. There's little increments along the way. But teachable moments too. There's always teachable moments in sport as in life. So.
As a coach, start season success in the late 90s. You with your own team makes another Sweet 16 run on their own. What do you remember from that team that year, and just how they were able to make their own run?
Well, first of all, I would say they were a good team tennis-wise. They had the talent to do it, compared to some of the other teams that we were playing against. And it's like it was one of those things where, like, as soon as it wasn't easy. There were, we had to go through some losses and learn some things. We had to learn some things about each other along the way. And so it was one of those things where, for whatever reason, when it started to click a little bit, one success kind of led to another, kind of led to another, kind of led to another, and then your confidence grows. And the one thing that I really remember about that whole case scenario, it was a great run. It was great fun. We wound up in the first round of the national tournament in the regional, in that first couple of rounds at a regional site. At the regional final, we wound up playing Elon. And we had to move indoors. It was at Elon, but it rained, so we had to move indoors. And so there weren't as many fans there. But also, we had played them in the regular season, and we had beat them in the regular season, but one of their top-level players was injured and missing from that match. So at that time, I had a graduate assistant, Ann Miller, helping me, and we kind of put our heads together and we figured we need to do something a little different. You know, they've already seen us once, but we need to do something a little different. And the best way we thought we could make a difference in that match was in doubles. So what we did is we kind of left our number one doubles team alone. Okay, they pretty much played traditional doubles. And they were holding their own quite well. At 2 and 3, we felt like we needed to try something different, and so we worked, about a week or so leading into that match. We hit the doubles court, and we kind of worked on playing some different doubles formations. And at that time, not a lot of women's doubles were really doing that, and we did get some buy-in, some commitment from the players on it too. So we went into that regional final, okay, and we used this different double strategy at 2 and 3 doubles, and it wound up winning us both of those matches. Whereas if we had not, I don't know if we could have won those, but we wound up winning at 2 and 3, and then we won at 1, and we swept the doubles, and that was the turning point. But that's something I remember because it was really interesting. On one of those courts, one of those doubles courts, one of the teams of our team was playing the old traditional way, and that's what we talked about. We can't do that. And so they were down 4-1, and they wouldn't play. we taught them some different formations, and they wouldn't play that way. And so at the changeover, number 3 was going gangbusters. They were doing it. Number 1 was in, and I just said, listen, I said, we've worked on this all week. Why will you all not do this? And and I just said, I just don't want to hear about it anymore. Okay, I said, let's just give it a try. Okay, try it for at least 2 games, okay, for me. Just try it. Okay, you're already down 4-1, okay? How much worse can it get? So they went out there and they reluctantly, and they won 2 games in a row, continued to play that format, and came back from 4-1 down to win 8-5. And so it's like, and some people who coach will understand. It's just like you feel like you're banging your head against the wall and going, oh, why won't you do this? Okay, but anyway, so that may have been the only time ever in my coaching career where there was a magic word, and that was just a simple change in strategy. But as most coaches know, you can do that, but your players at some point in time, they got to buy into it. And that was one of those times where I'm just going, thank you, God, that they finally did something I asked them to do. Anyway.
Continuing on in your career, there's been so much change at Carson-Newman there in your career, moving up from NAIA to D2, one of the big ones as well. But probably new courts as well. Facilities have been upgraded like crazy around here. Like the room we're in right now hasn't been here for long. How have you seen Carson-Newman grow, and what are just some of the big changes that kind of blow your mind? If you went back to yourself when you first got on campus here, that you could not believe that you've seen.
Well, for one thing, I could not have foreseen the MSAC, the Maddox Student Activity Center building. All I remember from growing up here in Jefferson City and from being a student here was, of course, Holt Fieldhouse. Okay. So when Holt Fieldhouse got the renovation and the new part was added onto it, for those who know what the old Holt Fieldhouse looked like, not just the entrance basketball court, but the underneath where at that time only male locker rooms were, okay, and then there was a swimming pool underneath, okay. If you knew that, and then the first time I ever walked into the MSAC and the renovated Holt Fieldhouse, yeah, talk about being blown away. It's just like, oh my gosh. As a matter of fact, my office here in the MSAC is unique, and I had a choice of offices in that suite. And I chose this office because it's probably, I think it's the only office in this building that's in the MSAC that's like that. I have 3 different walls, okay? I have the old cinder block wall, okay? Then I have the just drywall kind of stuff, but there's one wall that's brick, and it's not cinder block, but it's a smaller brick, and it's the outside wall of the old Holt Fieldhouse.
Wow.
That was on the north side of the building. For those that remember, on the north side of the building where's the little drive you came in and you could park. There was a row of parking, angled parking, and then there was some parallel parking right up to, it was a railing with like a little drop off, and then you had the building. Well, that wall in my office is the old Holt Fieldhouse. Okay, the office next to me doesn't have that. The office on the other side of me doesn't have that. So that's my, every time I walk into that office and I think about that, and then I've got pictures of even when I was a player, team pictures, and most of my teams that I can fit in there now. It's just, once again, I just think about relationships with people. And frankly, my relationship with Carson-Newman from growing up here to now having it been a place where I've basically made my career. And it just, sometimes I just sit around and look at it and, man, how in the world did this happen? And where does all the time go? I know I haven't been perfect. I've made mistakes, but I don't regret the time I've spent here at all. And I just, at some point in time, I guess, it probably sounds like I'm old, and I am getting older, but it feels like that I've hopefully I've been able to do what God placed me here to do. And in that respect, I've got no regrets, and I'm at a sense of peace with that.
Continuing on in your career as a coach here, you're in the early 2000s, you're well into Division II in the South Atlantic Conference, and then just this team goes on another great run, the women's team, winning the South Atlantic Conference tournament, and also you're named Coach of the Year for the South Atlantic Conference. How did it feel, one, for your team to make that run, and two, you get named Coach of the Year for the entire conference?
Well, that team was another special team, very much different from some of the other teams I had. That, and for most of the time, even if we didn't get to the NCAAs, or we were still, we were a decent team. People had to. They had, when they came to play us, they had to come to play. Okay, we weren't going to roll over and play dead. So, but that team, and I guess it was actually 08 and 09, those 2 years, that women's team was once again another unique team. They didn't necessarily maybe have to, and this is something you learn too, is you don't necessarily have to be best buds off the court and you do everything together 24/7, but when you come together, you enjoy being with that group of people. Even when times are not good, you want to be with those people to work together through those bad times or through those difficult times. And we had some great characters, we had some good leadership, and I guess I could sit here and take the credit for it, but I can't. Okay, once again, that was something that just happens, okay, when, for whatever reason it happens. I wish there was a formula, then you could just repeat that formula every year and you'd win everything every year. That happens very rarely in this life. Every once in a while, teams seem to be able every year just to reload or, but that does happen. But for the vast majority of us, it doesn't really work that way, And so that was just another special group of people at the right place at the right time. We were able to stay with some continuity over that time too, and really only probably at least in 09, 08 was a good year too. We got to the finals, of the conference and just quite couldn't do it. But the next year we were able to add one more piece to that puzzle, and so it just, once again, it turned into, like you say, it was another magical ride. I'm not sure exactly what all the moving parts were to it, but that turned out to be a real fun time, a fun group of people, and it was a lot of fun to watch them play too.
You continue your career for a couple more years, and then finally, a few years ago, you decided to hang it up. Yeah. What was the ultimate decision behind deciding to retire from coaching?
Ooh, well, I guess the only way I can put it to you is it was just apparent to me, at least, that it was time. It was a very hard decision, gut-wrenching decision to make, and it wasn't made overnight for sure. As a matter of fact, I really going into that school year of 17-18, that was not in my plan. As that year unfolded, and also I guess I finally came to the realization, number one, is that my priorities have to change. I'm a caregiver for an elderly parent, and I had begun to start missing a lot of practices and maybe even matches because I get up in the morning and there's something more important that I need to be taking care of and a person I need to be helping out. And it's like I hated that. I mean, it really tugged at me. It was very stressful. Also, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've had a great run. It's time for somebody else to have the opportunity that I had to come here to a place like Carson-Newman, if that's where they want to be, And I said, I think I've done all I can do, and I really do think it's time for somebody younger to come in and have their shot at it. They can, I'm tired. I'm being pulled in too many different directions here between home and here, and that it's time for somebody younger to come in, or somebody with that has a renewed passion and energy, and get this thing going, and have their chance at it. I mean, there were the last few years, there were several times where we were just almost right there, or we were just one piece away, and we just never could quite get over the hump. And I guess, I thought, well, I've done all I know to do. There's some things I can't change. There's some things that are always out of your control, and it would be nice to be able to control some of those things that help you be more successful. And there's some things that you can control. And those things I could control, I just was being pulled in two different, and I didn't feel like that I could really give it the time and attention it needed. And so it just kind of all came to a head, and it's almost like one day I just heard God tell me it's time. You know what I mean? It's time. You've got some other priorities. It's time. You've done everything that you could do. You've tried to do this the best that you could, and you've tried to help other people, and it's just time. So that's kind of it's not a very fancy story, but that's pretty much the thought process that went into it. And that's the thought process that'll go into my time as a teaching now. As I was fortunate enough, Carson-Newman decided they would allow me to continue as a full-time person in academics. I had always been teaching 12 to 14 semester hours a year serving on faculty committees, and then I had this other full-time tennis gig, you know. So, but they were happy for me to stay on. But I've also realized that there's a time for everything too, and my teaching career is coming to a close. At the end of this school year, 21-22, I will be retiring from full-time academics as well. And once again, I wasn't really planning it right now. I knew it was coming in the near future, but once again, it's just time. And I have a sneaking suspicion that God's got something else for me to do. I don't think it'll be another full-time job, but He's not quite done with me yet, and He's got maybe something else in line for me. But it sure will. It sure will help me to be able to be more there when my mother needs me. But with this last year and a half, 2 years now with COVID and trying to stay healthy and still wanting to be in connection with these students, I'm not real good at the online stuff. I mean, I can do it, but I just don't know how to create relationships online, and it's just been very stressful, and it's time. It's time.
You talk about when you first started NAIA Women's Tournament. That was the first ever NAIA Women's Tournament. Sport has grown for women exponentially the past few years. Recently, now with Carson-Newman women's tennis team, Anna Carla Resende made a run for the ITA regional final in the fall. How has seeing this game grow for women, how have you seen that happen over the years at the college and at the international level as well?
It's really almost hard to imagine because I've been, I guess, probably in the right place at the right time when I came up in terms of entering college, although for women the college scholarship and the whole scene and the opportunities you have are sure not like they are today. Okay, when I started in college, I mean, there were, in most places, at least at Carson-Newman, there were basically 3 intercollegiate sports. Okay, so you had volleyball, basketball, and tennis, pretty much. There might be other club sports or intramural sports, and it was pretty much the same. Not, you know, even at larger universities, there were not the options collegiately to play sport as there are now. Okay, so that's just blown me away. The amount of money involved that it takes to do that, and the money involved in sport at all levels, is insane. Mm-hmm. It's insane. I remember when I was here at Carson-Newman, Coach Pinkerton's wife made our skirts, made our uniforms one year. We don't do that anymore, you know. So, and from the way we traveled, you know, it's just unbelievable how different it is. And, you know, in respects, that's given a lot of, especially women, more opportunities to do what they enjoy to do and to actually, you know, get an education too at the college level. And we've got a lot of international students now in the sport of tennis, but in all sports really. And if you're coming from another country here to participate in intercollegiate athletics, you know, it didn't dawn on me until, well, why are they doing that? And well, guess what? Because in the educational system there, it's much different. Okay, is you don't play college sports. And so this is a great opportunity, not just for women, but internationally, to continue to play a sport that you love and also get an education, because at the level that here at Carson-Newman, I mean, we're not really looking to grow professional tennis players, okay? I dabbled a little bit of that in my college career and playing a couple of kind of minor league tournaments and everything, and oh boy, there's a difference in the level of competition. And so I decided that probably wasn't realistic for me. Some kids here think it is, but very few. But I've seen not just women's sports grow, but sport in general, and just the insanity that it is now. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy. Back in the day, you know, teaching 12 to 14 hours a year, serving on faculty committees, doing the NAIA skit, you know, it was halfway doable. The move to the NCAA, oh my gosh, I mean, it's incredible. I try to tell people this all the time. When you think of an iceberg, you know, there's a big part of that iceberg that's underneath the water that you never see. Well, that's coaching. You know, you may see a coach at the court or on the field on game day and da-da-da-da, but that's just the tip, okay? There's so much. And being at a small school like this, I mean, not only was I the coach, I was the bus driver. I had to make all the lodging arrangements. You know, I'm in purchasing and inventory. So, you know, it's just, it got to be quite a lot. You know, but that's just how sport has changed. Sometimes I think it's for the better, and there's other things about it that I don't think so much of.
I want to leave you with this as you prepare to retire from Carson-Newman full-time. What would you say to your younger self, if you could, about the time at Carson-Newman University and what this university has done for you?
Well, I guess I'd probably have to say to my younger self as a Carson-Newman student is don't wish your time away. Don't wish that you were about done. Don't wish that you're getting ready to get out of this place, you know, and you know, don't wish your time away. But I think I don't know that you can tell a younger self that. I think it's just the natural process of life and growing and maturing, and like I said, back in the day when we were doing our thing and loving it, and you know, what a great life. You know, you get to come to school, you get to play tennis, then you go to class, then you play tennis. You know, you don't really have a care in the world, so it seems, but you just, you know, you don't realize it at the time what a blessing it is, and I guess what I mean by that is that I guess as you can look back, you kind of see how God has weaved His plan through a lot of things that you did in your life. Some of them were some really easy things, some of them were good things, some of them probably weren't so good things, some of them were very hard things. But no matter what, you know, He had your back, and if you just don't, the experiences you go through, as much as you might want to wish them away, don't. You know, try to take the best from them and move on, because you're probably being prepared for the next thing. That's what I would tell my younger self. I doubt my younger self would have listened.
Well, Dr. Love, thank you so much for taking time here today. Thank you so much for talking with us today here on Mossy Creek Conversations. For more about Carson-Newman tennis, you can go to cneagles.com and stay up to date as well with more episodes of Mossy Creek Conversations. Thank you.